The penthouse office smelled like old money and new lies, leather, mahogany, and the particular musk of expensive cologne worn by men who considered themselves untouchable. I had 60 seconds before Attorney Jung finished his phone call. 60 seconds to decide if I was brave enough or stupid enough to destroy my life for a man I'd never spoken to. My hands trembled as I folded the post-it note into quarters, the yellow paper already damp with nervous sweat. 7 words. That's all I'd written. 7 words that would either save Korea's most dangerous man or get me killed trying. Your lawyer is selling you out. Through the frosted glass wall separating the conference room from the main office, I could see Kang Tae-jin's silhouette. Even in shadow he commanded space like gravity worked differently around him. 6'2" of controlled violence wrapped in a Brioni suit, dark hair swept back, shoulders that had carried an empire since his father's assassination 3 years ago. I'd cleaned his office every Thursday night for 8 months. 8 months of being invisible, of emptying trash cans and wiping down surfaces while the Gumwa organization's executives conducted business around me like I was furniture. Like I didn't have eyes. Like I didn't have ears. Like I didn't speak Korean. Attorney Jung's voice drifted through the door, sharp and satisfied, speaking in rapid Korean to whoever was on the other end. Yes, the transfer documents are ready. The offshore accounts in the Caymans. Tae-jin has no idea. By the time he realizes the Lee family has bought his shipping routes, it'll be too late to stop the hemorrhaging. My stomach dropped. The Lee family. Gumwa's oldest rivals, the organization that had put a bullet in Tae-jin's father's head outside a restaurant in Gangnam. The family that had been trying to dismantle the Kang Empire for 20 years. And Young Min-ho, Tae-jin's most trusted advisor, the man who'd helped him navigate the legal complexities of running a criminal empire disguised as legitimate business, was handing them everything on a silver platter. I should have walked away. Should have finished cleaning, clocked out, gone home to my studio apartment in Pilsen where I was nobody and safe and far away from men who settled disputes with bullets instead of courtrooms. But I thought about my mother. About the way she'd raised me to speak up when I saw injustice, even when, especially when, silence would be easier. About the sermon she'd preached last Sunday on being a keeper of truth in a world of lies. Pastor Imani Brooks didn't raise a coward. So I straightened my spine, smoothed down my cleaning uniform and made a choice that would change everything. My name is Imani Brooks and before that night I was nobody. 26 years old, 2 jobs, 1 sick mother and a mountain of medical debt that grew faster than I could pay it down. By day, I was a translator for Cook County Hospital's Korean-speaking patients. By night, I cleaned office buildings in the Loop, including the top 3 floors of the Millennium Tower where the Gumwa organization kept their legitimate business headquarters. The job paid $18 an hour, which was good money for pushing a vacuum and wiping down desks. What made it great money was the danger premium. Everyone knew what Gumwa really was and the cleaning company charged extra for the liability. I got an extra $2 an hour for pretending not to notice the guns in desk drawers or the blood someone occasionally forgot to clean off bathroom tiles. I'd grown up on the South Side, daughter of a storefront church pastor who believed in speaking truth to power and loving your neighbor even when your neighbor was a gangbanger or an addict or someone who'd made every wrong choice life offered. Mama had taught me Korean during my childhood, anticipating mission work in Seoul that never materialized after she got sick. Instead, that language became my superpower. My secret weapon in a city where Korean organized crime moved billions of dollars through legitimate businesses, and nobody expected the black cleaning lady to understand a word they said. I'd heard things. Of course I had. Deals being made, threats being issued, the casual discussion of violence that made my hands shake as I emptied trash cans. But I'd never acted on any of it. Never written anything down. Never broken the invisible contract that kept me employed and breathing. Until tonight. Until I heard Attorney Jung, the silver-haired, Yale-educated legal genius who'd made Tae-jin untouchable in the courts, casually discuss selling out his boss like it was a business transaction instead of a death sentence. Kang Tae-jin was 33 years old and ruled Chicago's Korean underworld with the cold precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a warlord. I knew this because I'd been cleaning his office long enough to piece together the man behind the reputation. The office itself was a study in contradictions. Minimalist aesthetics, slate gray walls, black leather furniture, a desk made from a single piece of walnut that probably cost more than my car. But scattered throughout were touches of something softer. A framed photograph of an older couple on his desk, his parents before his father's murder. Books in Korean stacked on the credenza, not business texts but poetry. A half-finished game of baduk on the side table, the black and white stones arranged in patterns that suggested he played against himself. He was lonely. I'd realized that months ago, watching him through the glass walls as he worked alone long after his executives had gone home. Surrounded by people all day, soldiers, advisors, business partners, but always alone when it mattered. His father, Kang Tae-jin, had built Gumwa from nothing. Started as a street enforcer in Seoul, immigrated to Chicago in the 80s, and carved out territory through a combination of strategic brutality and legitimate business acumen. By the time he died, he controlled shipping, real estate, construction, billions in assets, most of it legal enough to pass scrutiny. Tae-jin had inherited it all at 30. Too young, people said. Too educated, too Americanized, too soft. He'd studied economics at Northwestern, spoke English without an accent, wore Tom Ford instead of the flashy labels his father's generation preferred. The old guard had expected him to fail. Instead, he'd consolidated power with surgical efficiency. Eliminated rivals, bought out competitors, legitimized more of the business while quietly maintaining the violent infrastructure that kept enemies at bay. In 3 years, he doubled Gumwa's revenue and halved its street-level visibility. But that success had made him a target. The Lee family in particular wanted what he'd built. And they'd found the perfect weapon in Attorney Jung, the man Tae-jin trusted most. I'd watched their relationship over months of cleaning. The way Tae-jin listened when Jung spoke, the deference he showed to the older man's legal expertise. Jung had been his father's lawyer first, had helped navigate Tae-jin through the chaos after the assassination. He was more than an advisor. He was surrogate family, which made the betrayal so much worse. Attorney Jung ended his call with a satisfied sigh. Through the frosted glass, I watched him stand, stretch, gather his briefcase. He'd be leaving soon. Tae-jin was in the conference room reviewing contracts with 2 of his executives. This was my window. My heart hammered as I pushed my cleaning cart toward Jung's office, the post-it note burning in my pocket like a live grenade. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to mind my business, to survive by staying invisible. But I kept moving. Jung's office was empty. I had maybe 3 minutes before he returned to grab his coat. I set the note on his desk calendar. No, too obvious. Tucked it into his briefcase. No, he might not see it for days. Finally, I pressed it onto the underside of his desk phone handset, where his fingers would find it the next time he made a call. Your lawyer is selling you out. Simple. Direct. Anonymous enough that Jung wouldn't immediately connect it to me, but specific enough that Tae-jin would investigate. I hoped. I was turning to leave when the door opened and Jung himself appeared, his expression shifting from surprise to suspicion in the span of a heartbeat. What are you doing in my office? His Korean was sharp, clipped, the tone of a man used to being obeyed without question. My mind went blank with terror. Then my mother's voice echoed in my head. When caught, own it with dignity. So I bowed. A proper Korean bow, not the shallow nod Americans did, but a full 30-degree angle that showed respect. And I answered in flawless Korean. I apologize, Attorney Jung. I was cleaning your desk and noticed the phone handset was loose. I was securing it. His eyes narrowed. You speak Korean? Yes, sir. I kept my gaze lowered, submissive, the perfect picture of a deferential service worker who knew her place. How long have you worked here? 8 months, sir. And you've been listening to our conversations? His hand moved toward his jacket, and I knew with sudden terrible certainty that he was armed. That I'd just put myself on a very short list of people who needed to disappear. I clean, sir. I don't listen. I don't understand business matters. The lie came easily, smoothly, years of code switching and survival instincts kicking in. He studied me for a long moment and I could see the calculation in his eyes. Kill me now and risk Tae-jin asking questions about a missing cleaner? Or let me go and gamble that I was telling the truth about not understanding what I'd overheard. The office door opened again. One of Tae-jin's guards, a thick-necked man named Han, stuck his head in. Attorney Jung, Sejangnam needs you in the conference room. The interruption saved my life. Jung's hand moved away from his jacket. I'll be right there. He turned back to me, his smile cold. Finish your work quickly and leave. Don't come back to this floor tonight. I bowed again. Sir. Thank you, sir. He left and I stood there in his office shaking so hard I had to grab the desk for support. The post-it note was still stuck to the phone handset, bright yellow against black plastic. Damning evidence if he found it before Tae-jin did. But it was too late to take it back now. I grabbed my cleaning cart and fled to the safety of the elevator, my heart still racing, my hands still trembling. I'd done it. I'd planted the warning. Now all I could do was pray that Tae-jin found it before Jung found me. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in my apartment building, footsteps in the hallway, car doors slamming outside, the creak of old pipes, sent my pulse skyrocketing. By dawn, I'd convinced myself that Jung would have his people waiting for me at the hospital, that I'd never make it through my shift, that my mother would find out her daughter died because she couldn't mind her own business. But I went to work anyway. Because Pastor Imani Brooks was counting on that paycheck to cover her medications, and medical debt didn't care if you were terrified. The hospital shift passed in a blur of translation work, explaining procedures to scared patients, mediating between frustrated doctors and non-English speakers, trying very hard not to think about the note or Jung or the way Tae-jin's world was probably imploding right now. I was wrapping up my shift, gathering my things from the translator's office when my phone rang. Unknown number. Chicago area code. I almost didn't answer. But something, intuition, stupidity, fate made me pick up. Is this Imani Brooks? The voice was male, Korean accented, professional. Who's asking? My employer would like to speak with you. A car will pick you up from Cook County Hospital in 15 minutes. Front entrance. My blood turned to ice. I'm not. This is not a request, Miss Brooks. 15 minutes. Front entrance. Don't be late. The line went dead. I stood there staring at my phone, my mind racing. This was it. This was Jung cleaning up loose ends. I should run. Call the police. Disappear into witness protection. But something made me stay. Something made me walk to the front entrance 14 minutes later and wait by the glass doors, my coat pulled tight against the November cold. The car that pulled up wasn't what I expected. Not a black SUV with tinted windows, but a silver Mercedes S-Class, luxury sedan with a driver in a suit who opened the back door with the polite efficiency of someone used to handling valuable cargo. Miss Brooks. I got in because running seemed pointless now. Either they'd kill me here or kill me somewhere else. At least in the car there was a chance I could talk my way out. The drive took 20 minutes. We didn't go to the Millennium Tower. Instead we headed north into neighborhoods that got progressively wealthier, until we pulled up to a building I recognized from Chicago magazine spreads. The Sinclair, one of those ultra-luxury high-rises where penthouses sold for $20 million. The driver led me through a private entrance into an elevator that required a key card, up to the 42nd floor. The doors opened directly into a penthouse, and I stepped into a space that made Tae-jin's office look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Furniture that belonged in museums. Art on the walls that I recognized from my college humanities course. Actual Rothko, actual Basquiat, the kind of collection that suggested wealth beyond comprehension. And standing by the windows, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city like he owned it, was Kang Tae-jin. He turned when I entered, and for the first time I saw his face up close instead of through frosted glass. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, eyes that were dark brown and absolutely unreadable. He was even more intimidating in person, 6'2" of controlled power wrapped in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent. Miss Brooks. His English was perfect, barely accented. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. No. He gestured to a leather chair. Please. Sit. I sat because my legs were shaking. He remained standing, studying me with the intensity of a predator deciding whether I was prey or threat. You left me a note. Not a question. A statement. I opened my mouth to deny it, but what was the point? He knew. Somehow he knew. Yes. Why? The question hung in the air between us. I could have lied, could have claimed ignorance or accident. But looking into those dark eyes, I knew lies wouldn't work here. Because nobody deserves to be betrayed by the people they trust most. And because letting someone die when I could prevent it felt worse than the risk of trying. Gutted my company for Chin Logistics. His jaw tightened. The merger terms looked fair on the surface. But buried in the fine print, the kind of fine print I would have noticed if I'd been in my right mind, was language that would have transferred controlling interest to Chen's board. Made me a figurehead in my own empire. He pocketed his phone. Your accident just saved me from corporate suicide. The weight of that settled over Amar like a physical thing. What happens now? She asked. Now. Seo-jun studied her with those dark, calculating eyes. Now I need to know everything. Who you are. What you saw. Why a waitress knows enough about contract law and contact poisons to recognize a trap that my own legal team missed. I told you. I used to work in corporate law. Yes. But you didn't finish that sentence. He leaned against the opposite wall, arms crossed. You worked in corporate law before you. What? What made a lawyer become a waitress? The question hit too close to truth she couldn't afford to share. That's not relevant. Everything about you just became relevant, Amara Hayes. His voice went soft again. That particular kind of soft that preceded violence. You inserted yourself into my business. Saved me from something I didn't know I needed saving from. That makes you either an asset or a threat. He pushed off the wall, moving toward her with predatory grace. And I don't leave threats or assets unexamined. Before Amara could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. We're not done, he said. But I need to handle the vultures circling my dining room. Stay here. I have other tables. I'll handle it. He was already moving back toward the main restaurant. Don't leave this hallway. Don't talk to anyone. Don't. Run, she finished. He stopped, turned, and smiled. It was a terrible thing, beautiful and predatory and full of dark promise. You can run, he said quietly. But understand this, I will find you. And when I do, I'll want answers you're not going to want to give. Then he was gone. Amara stood alone in that concrete corridor, her hands shaking with delayed reaction. What had she done? She'd saved a man who didn't need saving. Who would now dig into her life until he unearthed every secret she'd buried. Who would discover that Amara Hayes was a fiction. That her real name was Amara Carrington. That 3 years ago she'd testified against her former employer in a money laundering case and entered witness protection. That she'd been hiding ever since. And now she'd made herself visible to the most dangerous man in Chicago. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Park. Zoe asking for you. Told her you'd be home soon. She drew you a picture. The photo attached showed crayon flowers. Bright and cheerful and innocent. Amara closed her eyes. She couldn't run. Running meant abandoning Zoe. Meant starting over again in a new city with a new name and new fears. But staying meant facing Kang Seo-jun's questions. Meant lying to a man who'd already proven he could see through her masks. The sound of raised voices drifted from the dining room. Not shouting but tense. Controlled fury wrapped in business language. Amara made a decision. She walked back toward the main restaurant. Not running. Not hiding. Facing it. Whatever it turned out to be. The dining room had transformed into a battlefield dressed in business casual. Amara paused in the doorway, watching the confrontation unfold with the practiced invisibility of someone who'd learned to read powerful people from the margins. Seo-jun stood at the head of the table, the ruined contract spread before him like evidence at a trial. His aunt sat to his right, arms crossed, expression carved from ice. Reeves and Park stood on the opposite side, their earlier confidence cracking under scrutiny. Show me the pen, Seo-jun said. His voice was conversational. Pleasant even. It terrified Amar more than shouting would have. Park's face had gone chalk white. I don't. The Mont Blanc you brought. The one you set near my contract pages. Seo-jun's smile was a blade. I'd like to examine it. It's just a pen, Seo-jun. Reeves tried to laugh, but it came out forced. Let's not get paranoid over spilled wine. We can reschedule for next week with fresh documents. I'm not paranoid. Seo-jun picked up one of the wine-soaked pages, held it up to the light. I'm thorough. There's a difference. He turned to his aunt, spoke in rapid Korean. She nodded once, pulled out her phone, typed something. Within 60 seconds, 3 men in dark suits entered the private dining room. Not restaurant staff. Security. The kind that moved like violence was a second language. One of them held what looked like a briefcase. He opened it on the table, revealing equipment that definitely didn't belong in a restaurant. UV light. Testing strips. Specimen containers. What is this? Reeves demanded. You can't just. I can do whatever I want in my city. Seo-jun's tone never changed. Still pleasant. Still terrifying. Now. The pen. Or I have my people search you. Your choice. Park broke. His hand trembled as he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the Mont Blanc. It gleamed under the chandelier light, expensive and innocent looking. One of Seo-jun's men took it with gloved hands. Placed it under the UV light. The barrel lit up like a warning flare. Iridescent blue-green. Unmistakable. Scopolamine derivative, the man said in accented English, reading from a handheld scanner. Mixed with dimethyl sulfoxide for skin absorption. Dosage sufficient to induce temporary suggestibility lasting approximately 4 to 6 hours. The silence in the room was absolute. Reeves recovered first. We had no knowledge of this. Park must have acted alone. Interesting theory. Seo-jun circled the table slowly, a predator choosing which prey to strike first. Except you're the one who insisted on this specific meeting time. This specific location. You're the one who brought documents that just happened to have buried clauses that would have destroyed me. He stopped directly in front of Reeves. You're the one who benefits when I sign away my empire while chemically compromised. You have no proof I was involved. I have all the proof I need. Seo-jun gestured to his security team. Take them. Separate interrogations. I want to know who ordered this, who funded it, and what the endgame was. You can't hold us prisoner. Reeves backed toward the door. We have rights. We'll call the police. We'll call them. Seo-jun's smile widened. Please. Let's discuss with Chicago PD how you attempted to drug a businessman during contract negotiations. I'm sure that will go excellently for your law firm's reputation. Park crumbled completely. He was Chin Logistics. They wanted your shipping routes. Said if we could get you to sign, they'd make us both partners in the new entity. I didn't want to, I swear, but they threatened my family. Shut up, Reeves hissed. Too late. The confession hung in the air like cordite. Seo-jun nodded to his men. They moved with efficient brutality, hauling both lawyers toward the door. Park went quietly, already broken. Reeves fought, shouting about lawsuits and consequences and people who would make Seo-jun regret this. The threats faded as they disappeared down the hallway. Then Seo-jun's eyes found Amara. She was still standing in the doorway, frozen between the urge to flee and the terrible certainty that running would make everything worse. He was quiet for a long moment and I couldn't read his expression. Then he moved to the bar, poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into crystal glasses and brought one to me. Whiskey. You look like you need it. I took the glass because refusing felt dangerous. The first sip burned all the way down, warmth spreading through my chest. Tae-jin settled into the chair across from me, his movements economical, precise. Attorney Jung tried to have you killed this morning. 2 men waited outside your apartment building from midnight until dawn. When you didn't come home, they followed you to the hospital. I had my people intercept them before they could act. The room tilted slightly. Why would you do that? Because you saved my life. He said it simply, factually. Attorney Jung had been siphoning money from Gumwa for 18 months. Small amounts, enough to go unnoticed. He was also feeding information to the Lee family, shipping routes, security protocols, account numbers. Last night's deal was the final piece. By Monday, the Lees would have owned 40% of my legitimate businesses and all the leverage they needed to destroy what was left. I'm sorry. Don't be. His eyes met mine and something shifted in them. You saw something wrong and acted. That takes courage. Or stupidity. I haven't decided which. Probably both. That ghost of a smile again. Jung is dead, by the way. We found him in his office 2 hours ago. Apparent suicide, gunshot to the head, typed confession on his computer detailing his crimes. The whiskey turned to lead in my stomach. Was it really? Suicide. Tae-jin's expression didn't change. Does it matter? It should have mattered. Should have horrified me that I was sitting across from a man who'd just killed his most trusted advisor. But all I felt was relief that Jung couldn't come after me, couldn't hurt my mother, couldn't make me disappear into Lake Michigan. What happens now? I asked. Now. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and cedar-based. Now I have a problem. You're a witness to Jung's betrayal. You speak Korean fluently, which means you've been hearing things you shouldn't for 8 months. You're also the only person outside my inner circle who knew about the note before I did. My heart started hammering again. I won't tell anyone. I'll sign whatever you want. I'm not going to kill you, Imani. The way he said my name with the slight Korean inflection made my pulse jump for entirely different reasons. I'm going to offer you a job. That was not what I expected. What? I need someone I can trust. Someone who sees things others miss. Someone brave enough, or stupid enough, to risk her life warning a stranger. He stood, moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the morning light. Jung's death leaves a gap in my organization. I need a new advisor. Someone who understands both worlds, Korean and American. Someone who hasn't been corrupted by proximity to power. I'm a hospital translator. You're a pastor's daughter who speaks 4 languages, has a degree in international relations from DePaul, and works 2 jobs to pay your mother's medical bills. He turned to face me. I did my research, Imani. You're exactly what I need. The offer hung in the air, tempting and terrifying. And if I say no? Then you walk out of here with my gratitude and $50,000 for your mother's medical debt. You never work for my organization again, and I make sure you're protected from anyone seeking revenge for Jung's death. $50,000. It would clear Mama's hospital bills, pay for the treatments she needed, set us free from the debt that was drowning us both. And if I say yes? His smile was sharp as a blade. Then you belong to me. I said yes. Not because I wanted to work for a crime lord, but because Mama needed the surgery and the bills were drowning us, and because some small, traitorous part of me wanted to understand the man who'd looked at a cleaning lady's warning and seen someone worth saving. The first week was orientation. Tae-jin's world from the inside looked nothing like I'd imagined. His real headquarters wasn't the Millennium Tower office. That was for show, for meetings with legitimate business partners and government officials who needed plausible deniability. The actual nerve center of Gumwa was a compound in Northbrook, 30 acres surrounded by walls that looked decorative but were topped with cameras and motion sensors and probably landmines for all I knew. The main house was modern Korean architecture. Clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, interior courtyards with carefully raked gravel and stone gardens. It was beautiful and sterile and felt more like a monastery than a crime headquarters. My room was in the guest wing, a suite larger than my entire apartment. King bed with silk sheets, bathroom with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people, a closet already filled with clothes in my size, designer labels, nothing flashy, all in blacks and grays and deep blues. You represent me now, Tae-jin explained when I stared at the wardrobe. Image matters in my world. He assigned me a bodyguard, a quiet woman named Park Sunmi who'd been with Gumwa since before Tae-jin was born. She was 50-something, barely 5 feet tall, and I watched her disarm 2 grown men during a training demonstration without breaking a sweat. She'll teach you to protect yourself, Tae-jin said. And she'll keep you alive until you can. The training was brutal. Sunmi didn't believe in gentle instruction. Every morning at 6, we were in the compound's gym, hand-to-hand combat, weapons training, situational awareness drills that left me bruised and exhausted. You're soft, she said in Korean, watching me struggle through my 50th push-up. Soft gets you killed in this life. I'm a translator, not a soldier. You're Tae-jin's advisor now. That makes you a target. Soft targets don't survive. He was right. Within 3 days of my employment becoming known, there were 2 attempts on my life. One car that tried to run me off the road during a grocery trip with Sunmi, one envelope delivered to the compound that contained anthrax powder. Both were caught before I was hurt, but the message was clear. I'd become a player in a game I didn't understand. Tae-jin's response was immediate and absolute. He doubled my security, restricted my movements to the compound and essential trips only, and began including me in meetings that made my blood run cold. I learned the true structure of Gumwa, not the shipping company and real estate holdings that showed up in public records, but the shadow empire underneath. The gambling operations, the protection rackets, the connections to political figures who owed Tae-jin favors, the violence that kept it all running. But I also learned the limits. Tae-jin had rules. No drugs. His father had died in a war sparked by heroin trafficking, and he'd sworn never to touch that market. No human trafficking. No involvement with anything that hurt children. He was ruthless but not evil. Controlled but not cruel. I saw him at his worst during an executive meeting where one of his captains, a man named Choi, challenged his decision to cut ties with a profitable but brutal gang in Chinatown. They move product for us, Choi argued in Korean, his voice sharp with frustration. Cutting them off costs us $2 million a year. They also traffic women. Tae-jin's voice was silk over steel. That costs us nothing in money and everything in honor. The decision stands. Your father wouldn't. Tae-jin moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was sitting at the conference table. The next Choi was on the floor, Tae-jin's hand around his throat, pressing him into the expensive carpet with the casual brutality of absolute power. My father, Tae-jin said softly, is dead. I run Gumwadao. And if you ever question my authority again you'll join him. He released Choi, who scrambled away gasping. The rest of the executives sat frozen, not daring to breathe. Tae-jin straightened his tie, returned to his seat and continued the meeting like nothing had happened. I should have been terrified. Should have packed my things and run. But all I could think was that he'd chosen honor over money, had maintained a moral line his father drew even though it cost him millions. That night I found him in the compound's meditation room, a small space with tatami mats and a view of the stone garden. He sat cross-legged, still wearing his suit pants and dress shirt, but barefoot, his eyes closed. You can come in, Imani. I stepped inside, uncertain. I didn't mean to interrupt. You're not. He opened his eyes and in the soft light from the garden lamps he looked younger. Tired. Almost vulnerable. I assume you have questions about today. You could have killed him. Yes. But you didn't. Killing Choi would have sent the wrong message. That I'm my father, brutal, reactive, governed by ego. He gestured for me to sit and I lowered myself to the mat across from him. I need my captains to fear me but also to respect me. Fear alone creates resentment. Respect creates loyalty. Is that why you let Jung live as long as you did? Because you respected him? Pain flickered across his face, there and gone in a heartbeat. I trusted him. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment. My father taught me that loyalty is the foundation of our world. That family, blood or chosen, is sacred. Jung was chosen family. Finding out he betrayed me was worse than finding out he was stealing. I'm sorry. Don't be. His eyes met mine. You saved me from a worse betrayal. If Jung had succeeded, if the Lees had taken control, everything my father built would have been destroyed. Hundreds of people who depend on Gumwa for their livelihood would have suffered. So you killed him to protect them? I killed him because the alternative was watching everything I love burn. He stood, moved to the window overlooking the garden. People think power is about control. It's not. It's about responsibility. I'm responsible for 300 employees, their families, the communities we support. That responsibility requires hard choices. I stood too, moved to stand beside him. Do the hard choices ever get easier? No. He glanced at me and something in his expression softened. But having someone who sees the cost helps. Someone who remembers I'm human underneath the role. The air between us changed. Tarsh. Dangerous. Imani, he said softly. Why did you really leave that note? I told you. You told me the noble reason. Tell me the true one. I thought about lying. About giving him another version of the same answer. But standing there in the meditation room with his guard down and his vulnerability showing, I chose honesty instead. As I'd been watching you for 8 months. And I saw a man who carried the weight of an empire alone. Who worked until midnight every night because the work never ended. Who played Baduk against himself because there was no one else he could trust enough to play with. I swallowed hard. And I thought maybe someone that lonely deserved a chance to survive what was coming for him. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek with unexpected gentleness. You saw all that from cleaning my office? I see a lot of things people think are invisible. What else do you see? I wanted to say. I see you. The man underneath the empire. The son still mourning his father. The leader trying so hard to be better than what this life demands. But instead I said, I see someone who needs to sleep. You've been awake for 36 hours. He smiled, small and genuine. Sleep is for people who don't have enemies plotting their destruction. Your enemies can plot for 8 hours while you rest. The world won't end if you take a break. You sound like my mother. Your mother was a smart woman. His smile faded. She was. Brain aneurysm 2 years after my father died. The doctor said it was genetic, inevitable. But I think it was grief. I think she died of a broken heart because the man she loved was gone and the son she raised had become the thing she feared most. The pain in his voice made my chest ache. Tae-jin. Go to bed, Imani. He stepped back, rebuilding the walls I'd seen crack. We have a meeting with the Huang family tomorrow. They're interested in a partnership, but I need you there to verify the contracts are legitimate. The dismissal was clear. But I lingered. For what it's worth, I think your mother would be proud of you. For maintaining the honor code. For choosing morality over profit. For being better than what this life usually creates. I left before he could respond, before the moment could become something neither of us knew how to handle. But as I walked back to my room, I felt his eyes on me the entire way. The partnership meeting with the Huang family was scheduled for Friday at one of Tae-jin's legitimate businesses, a Korean barbecue restaurant in Lincoln Park that served as neutral ground for negotiations. Sunmi spent the morning coaching me on proper etiquette. The Huangs are old school. Traditional. They won't expect Tae-jin to bring a woman to negotiations, especially not a black woman. You need to show respect without showing weakness. How do I do that? With silence and observation. Speak only when spoken to. Bow at the proper depth. Pour tea with both hands. Let your competence be quiet until it's required to be loud. I dressed carefully. A black suit that Sunmi had selected, tailored to perfection, modest but professional. Pearl earrings, minimal makeup, my hair pulled back in a sleek bun. I looked like a corporate lawyer, which was the point. The restaurant was closed for our meeting. The private room in the back set up with low tables and floor cushions in traditional Korean style. Tae-jin arrived with 3 of his executives. I was the only woman. The Huang delegation consisted of the family patriarch, a man in his 70s with iron-gray hair and eyes like flint, his 2 sons and their legal counsel. Tae-jin made introductions in Korean. When he got to me, the patriarch's eyebrows rose. This is your new advisor? A woman. This is Imani Brooks, Tae-jin said smoothly. My chief liaison for international contracts. She speaks 5 languages fluently, including Korean, and has a degree in international relations. Her expertise is invaluable. The patriarch studied me like I was a curiosity in a museum. You speak Korean? Yi Huang Doryanim. Yes, Elder Huang. I bowed at precisely the right angle, deeper than equals, shallower than a servant. It is an honor to meet you. His expression shifted. Not warmth exactly, but a reduction in suspicion. Your accent is excellent. Where did you learn? From my mother, sir. She studied at Yonsei University before becoming a pastor in Chicago. A pastor. Interest flickered. Protestant. Sir. She runs a small storefront church that serves the South Side community. Something in his demeanor thawed. My wife is devout. She'll want to meet your mother. It was a small opening, but Sunmi caught my eye and nodded fractionally. I'd passed the first test. The meeting proceeded in Korean, a mix of business discussion and social ceremony. Food arrived: bulgogi, kimchi, rice cakes, banchan in a rainbow of colors. I poured tea for everyone using both hands, keeping my eyes lowered in the traditional gesture of respect. The Huangs wanted access to Gumwa's shipping routes for their electronics imports. In exchange, they'd offer distribution networks in California and favorable terms on warehouse space. I listened carefully, reading the contracts they'd prepared, catching the subtle discrepancies that would have cost Gumwa millions in the long term. When there was a pause in discussion, I leaned close to Tae-jin and whispered in Korean, Clause 7, Subsection 3. The insurance liability transfers to us after 60 days instead of 90. And the penalty fees for delayed shipment are triple the industry standard. He didn't react visibly, just nodded fractionally and turned back to Elder Huang. Your contract is generous, but there are concerns about liability timelines and penalty structures. The elder's eyes sharpened. Such as? Tae-jin gestured to me. Miss Brooks can explain. I felt every eye in the room turn to me. This was the moment Sunmi had prepared me for, showing competence without arrogance, strength without aggression. I pulled out my own copy of the contract, set it on the table and pointed to the specific clauses. Speaking in Korean, I explained how the insurance transfer created unnecessary risk for Gumwa, how the penalty fees were disproportionate and would discourage long-term partnership rather than encourage it. These terms suggest you're expecting failure rather than success, I said carefully. True partnerships are built on shared risk and mutual benefit. Perhaps we could revise these sections to better reflect the collaborative spirit you've expressed today. The room was silent. I just called out the Huangs for embedding poison pills in their contract, but I'd done it with enough diplomatic polish that they couldn't take offense without looking petty. Elder Huang's expression was unreadable. Then he smiled. Actually smiled. You're correct, Miss Brooks. My lawyer was overly cautious. He shot a look at his own legal counsel who blanched. Draft revised terms that reflect Miss Brooks's suggestions. Shared risk, mutual benefit. The tension broke. We spent the next hour renegotiating in good faith, and by the time we finished, both sides had a deal that actually made sense. As we were leaving, Elder Huang pulled Tae-jin aside. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw the older man glance at me, saw Tae-jin's response, something that made Huang laugh and clap him on the shoulder. In the car afterward, Tae-jin was quiet for a long time. Then he turned to me. Huang said I was smart to hire you. That a woman who can catch deceptive contract language in a second language while maintaining perfect etiquette is worth 100 lawyers. I was just doing my job. You were brilliant. His hand found mine, squeezed gently. You saw what I would have missed because I was too focused on the bigger picture. You protected me, protected Gumwa. That's exactly what I needed. The pride in his voice made warmth spread through my chest. The contract tricks were pretty subtle. Jung would have caught them. Jung would have caught them and used them to his advantage. You caught them and fixed them. His thumb traced circles on my palm. There's a difference. Sunmi driving caught my eye in the rearview mirror. Her expression said careful. But I didn't want to be careful. I wanted to lean into the feeling of Tae-jin's hand in mine, the way he looked at me like I'd just proven something important. Tae-jin, I started. Have dinner with me tonight. The request came out rougher than his usual controlled tone. Not business. Just dinner. I should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries. Should have remembered that he was my employer and I was an employee, and crossing that line would complicate everything. Yes, I said instead. His smile was worth every complication that would follow. Dinner wasn't at a restaurant. Tae-jin had his chef prepare a private meal in the compound's formal dining room, a space I'd never entered before. It was all dark wood and soft lighting. A table that could seat 20 but was set for 2, positioned by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the stone garden. I'd changed into one of the dresses from my closet, deep emerald silk that moved like water, paired with the pearl earrings that had been my grandmother's. When I entered, Tae-jin was already there, pouring wine. He'd shed his suit jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked almost relaxed. You're staring, I said, heat creeping up my neck. You're beautiful. He said it simply, factually, like he was commenting on the weather. I'm allowed to notice. He pulled out my chair with old-world courtesy that somehow didn't feel performative. The meal was Korean. Bulgogi, japchae, kimchi jjigae, banchan spread across the table like a feast. But there was also cornbread, collard greens, black-eyed peas. Southern food, I said, surprised. I asked what your mother cooks. Sunmi did research. He served me portions of both cuisines, his movements careful. I wanted you to feel, not comfortable exactly, but seen. The thoughtfulness of it made my throat tight. Thank you. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, and I realized this was the first time I'd seen him without the armor of his role. No executives watching, no deals to negotiate, no performance required. Just Tae-jin and Imani sharing a meal. Tell me about your mother, he said eventually. Sunmi's report was thorough, but I want to hear it from you. So I told him. About Mama's storefront church with its 30 faithful members and leaking roof. About her mission to Seoul that had been derailed by my father's death. Heart attack when I was 12, sudden and devastating. About how she'd learned Korean thinking she'd be a missionary and instead became a South Side pastor who spoke Korean to the growing immigrant community in our neighborhood. She sounds formidable, Tae-jin said. She is. She raised me alone, worked 3 jobs to keep the church running, and put me through school. When she got sick, ovarian cancer stage 3, she refused treatment at first because we couldn't afford it. I pushed food around my plate. That's why I took the cleaning job. The hospital pays well but not well enough. And now she's getting the surgery she needs. Because of you. I met his eyes. I haven't properly thanked you for that. You saved my life, Imani. Paying for your mother's medical care is the least I can do. He paused. But I need you to understand I didn't do it just out of gratitude. I did it because I want you here. With me. Safe and whole and not distracted by worry. The admission hung between us, weighted with implications neither of us was quite ready to name. Why me? I asked softly. You could have any advisor. Someone with experience in your world, someone who understands. I don't want someone who understands my world. His voice was rough, intense. I want someone who challenges it. Who sees the honor I'm trying to maintain and calls me out when I compromise it. Who's brave enough to walk into danger to warn a stranger. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. I want you. My breath caught. Tae-jin. I know all the reasons this is complicated. You work for me. You're not Korean. My world is dangerous and bringing you into it puts you at risk. His thumb traced circles on my palm. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment you left that note. The way you stood in Jung's office and bowed with perfect Korean etiquette. The way you faced down the Hwangs without flinching. The way you see me, really see me, underneath everything else. I see a man trying to be honorable in a dishonorable world, I whispered. I see someone lonely despite being surrounded by people. I stopped, unable to finish. What? I see someone I could fall in love with. If I let myself. The confession landed between us like a grenade. Tae-jin's grip on my hand tightened, his eyes darkening with something that made my pulse race. Imani. He stood, moved around the table, pulled me to my feet. We were close now, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Cedar and something darker, smoky. I need to know if you understand what you're saying. If you choose this, choose me, there's no going back. My world doesn't have casual relationships. My enemies will see you as leverage. My family will question your loyalty. And he cupped my face, his touch gentle despite his capacity for violence. I will be possessive and overprotective and probably insufferable about keeping you safe. I'm not fragile. I know. I've watched you face down criminals and negotiate with gangsters. But you're also the woman who reminds me I'm human. And the thought of losing you, terrifies me more than any enemy ever could. I pressed my hand over his, holding it against my cheek. I'm terrified too. But I'm also tired of being afraid. Tired of playing it safe. Tired of watching you from across the room and pretending I don't feel this. Feel what? Everything. This pull toward you. This recognition that we fit somehow even though we shouldn't. This. He kissed me. Not gentle, not tentative. Claiming and desperate, his mouth crushing against mine like he'd been holding back for weeks and finally let himself surrender. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat pooling through me. His hands slid down my back, pressed me against him, and I could feel every hard line of his body, could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. The kiss deepened, turned wild and hungry, years of loneliness and restraint burning away in the heat between us. When we finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead pressed against mine. Stay with me tonight, he breathed. Not in the guest wing. With me. I should have hesitated. Should have thought about consequences and complications. Should have been smart and cautious and professional. Yes, I said instead. His bedroom was in the private wing I'd never been allowed to enter. Minimalist like the rest of the compound. Slate gray walls, platform bed with black silk sheets. Windows overlooking the gardens. But there were personal touches here too. Photographs on the dresser, his parents, younger and smiling. A worn copy of The Art of War in Korean on the nightstand. A half-finished watercolor on an easel in the corner. You paint? Asked surprised. My mother taught me. She said violence was my father's language but art should be mine. He moved behind me, his hands settling on my waist. I'm not very good. I studied the watercolor, abstract strokes of blue and gray and white like waves or maybe clouds. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. His lips brushed my neck, sending shivers down my spine. I've wanted to touch you like this since the moment you walked into my penthouse. So brave and terrified and absolutely stunning. I was wearing cleaning clothes. You were wearing courage. His hands slid up my sides, reverent and possessive. That's always been what drew me to you. Not how you looked, but how you moved through the world. Like you knew you mattered, even when everyone else was trying to make you invisible. He turned me to face him, and the intensity in his eyes stole my breath. Tell me you want this. Tell me you're sure. I want this. My hands found his shirt buttons, began undoing them one by one. I want you. He captured my hands, stilling them. Imani. If we do this, you're mine. I don't share. I don't do casual. You'll be the woman who owns the most dangerous man in Chicago's heart, and everyone will know it. Everyone will see you as my weakness and my strength. Are you ready for that? The possessiveness should have scared me. Should have sent me running. But all I felt was fierce certainty. I don't want casual either. I don't want safe or simple or easy. I pressed my palm against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. I want you. All of you. The empire and the honor and the darkness and the light. Something in his expression cracked. Vulnerability bleeding through the armor. I'll try to be gentle. I don't need gentle. I need you. That was all the permission he needed. His mouth found mine again, but this time the kiss was slower, deeper, a claiming that felt like a promise. His hands made quick work of my dress, the silk pooling at my feet. I worked his shirt open, pushed it off his shoulders, and finally saw what I'd only imagined. He was beautiful. Lean muscle and pale skin, unmarred except for scars. A knife wound on his ribs, bullet graze on his shoulder, the history of violence written on his body. I traced each mark with my fingers, learning him. Does it hurt? Not anymore. He caught my hand, brought it to his lips. Nothing hurts when you touch me. He lifted me easily, carried me to the bed, laid me down on silk that was cool against my heated skin. His weight settled over me, and I'd never felt more claimed, more wanted, more seen than in that moment. Tell me if I'm too much, he murmured against my throat. Tell me if you need me to stop. Don't stop. Don't you dare stop. So he didn't. He mapped my body with his hands and mouth, learning every curve, every sensitive spot, every sound I made. When he finally moved inside me, it felt like completion. Like two broken pieces finding their way together and making something whole. Mine, he breathed against my ear, his accent thickening with emotion. Say it. Yours, I gasped, nails digging into his shoulders. I'm yours. The rhythm built between us. Desperate and perfect, claiming and surrendering, taking and giving all at once. When I shattered, it was with his name on my lips and his arms around me and the absolute certainty that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. He followed me over the edge seconds later, my name a prayer and a curse and a vow all at once. Afterward, we lay tangled together, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder, our breathing slowly returning to normal. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. I propped myself up on one elbow, looking down at him. That sounds ominous. The Lee family knows about you. About the note, about your role in Jung's exposure. His jaw tightened. They've put a price on your head. $500,000 for information leading to your location. $1 million if you're delivered alive. Ice flooded my veins. Why alive? Because they want to use you against me. Torture you, break you, make me watch. His arms tightened around me. It won't happen. I've tripled your security. You don't leave this compound without me or Sunmi. And I've sent a message to the Lee patriarch. Anyone who touches you dies screaming. Tae-jin. I mean it, Imani. I just found you. I just claimed you. I'm not losing you to my father's enemies. He cupped my face, his expression fierce. I will burn Chicago to the ground before I let them hurt you. The intensity of his devotion should have overwhelmed me. Instead, it felt like safety. Like finally having someone who'd fight for me the way I'd fought for him. Then we protect each other, I said firmly. Partners. Equals. You don't face the Lees alone, and neither do I. He smiled, small and genuine. Partners. We fell asleep tangled together, his body wrapped around mine like he could shield me from the world through proximity alone. I should have known the peace wouldn't last. The attack came on a Tuesday during my weekly visit to see Mama. Tae-jin had wanted to come with me, but a last-minute meeting with the Hwang family patriarch had required his presence. So Sunmi accompanied me instead, along with two of Tae-jin's best soldiers, Han and a younger man named Kim. The hospital was familiar territory and I'd gotten comfortable. That was my first mistake. Mama was recovering well from her surgery. The doctor said the cancer was in remission, that she'd need monitoring but the prognosis was good. She was sitting up in bed when I arrived, her Bible open in her lap, looking more like herself than she had in months. "Baby girl," she said, her smile brightening the sterile room. "You look different." "Different how?" "Happy. Settled. Like you finally stopped running from something." Her eyes, sharp despite her illness, studied me. "Or running toward something?" He crept up my neck. "I met someone. The Korean man who's paying my medical bills? I should have known better than to try hiding anything from Pastor Imani Brooks." "Yes. Is he good to you?" I thought about Tae-jin's possessive devotion, his fierce protectiveness, the way he looked at me like I was precious. "Yes. He's very good to me." "Then I'm happy for you." "But Imani," her hand found mine. "Be careful. Men with enough money to pay hospital bills like their grocery receipts have power. And power always comes with a price." "I know, Mama. I'm being careful." He squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, baby. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're becoming, I see strength in you now. Purpose. Don't lose that." We talked for another hour. About her church, about the members who'd been visiting, about her plans to return to preaching once she was strong enough. Normal things. Safe things. The conversation we'd have if my new boyfriend wasn't a crime lord and I wasn't advising a criminal empire. When visiting hours ended, I kissed her forehead and promised to return in 3 days. Sunmi and I were walking to the car, Han and Kim flanking us, eyes scanning for threats. When it happened, the van appeared out of nowhere, screeching to a stop beside us. Side door flying open. Men pouring out, for 5 too many, wearing masks, moving with military precision. Sunmi reacted instantly, her hand going for her weapon. But they'd planned for that. One of them had a taser and Sunmi went down convulsing before she could draw. Han and Kim fought back. I heard gunshots, suppressed, quiet, deadly. Saw Han take 2 in the chest, body armor saving him but the impact dropping him. Kim got one of the attackers before someone hit him with a baton, the crack of bone audible even over my own screaming. Arms grabbed me from behind. A cloth pressed over my mouth and nose, chemicals sweet, acrid. Chloroform my brain supplied uselessly as the world started spinning. I fought anyway. Kicked backward, felt my heel connect with someone's knee. Heard cursing in Korean. But there were too many of them and the drug was fast. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was Sunmi on the ground, trying to reach for me, blood streaming from her head. Then nothing. I woke to cold. Concrete floor beneath me, metal wall against my back, the smell of rust and old oil. My head pounded, my mouth tasted like chemicals, and when I tried to move I discovered my hands were zip-tied behind me. Panic hit first, primal, overwhelming, the kind that made breathing difficult. Then training kicked in, Sunmi's voice in my head. When captured, assess first, panic later. I was in some kind of warehouse. High ceilings with exposed beams, broken windows letting in gray daylight. Industrial district, judging by the sounds outside. Trucks, machinery, the distant horn of a ship. Near the docks, probably. I wasn't alone. 3 men stood near a makeshift table, speaking in Korean. Not the polite business Korean I'd used with the Hwangs, but rough street dialect. They were young, mid-20s, wearing Lee family colors. Should call the boss. She's awake. No rush. Boss said to let her sweat first. Make her scared. She doesn't look scared. They were right. Terror was there, but underneath it was something colder. Calculation. I'd been in Tae-jin's world long enough to know that fear was useless. Survival required strategy. One of them approached me, tattoos covering his arms, scar across his left cheek. He crouched down, studying me like I was an interesting specimen. "Kang's woman," he said in Korean. "The black bitch who thinks she's an advisor." I kept my expression blank. Didn't react to the slur. Didn't give him the satisfaction. "Not so brave now, are you?" He grabbed my face, forcing me to look at him. "You cost us everything. Jung was our inside man for 18 months. You exposed him in one night. That takes balls. Or stupidity." "Both," I said in Korean. He blinked, surprised. Then laughed. "She speaks. Good. That'll make this more fun." He slapped me. Not hard enough to break anything, but enough to make my ears ring and blood fill my mouth. That's for Jung. He was a good man. You got him killed. I spat blood at his feet. Jung was a traitor who sold out his own family. He deserved worse. The second slap was harder. My vision whited out, and when it cleared, he had a knife in his hand. The boss wants you alive and unspoiled for now. Leverage against Kang works best if you're still pretty. The blade traced my cheekbone, cold and sharp. But accidents happen. Maybe you fell. Maybe you tried to escape and got hurt. Who's to say? Tae-jin will kill you for this. My voice was steady despite the terror. Every single one of you. Slowly. Kang has to find us first. And even if he does, he leaned in close, his breath hot and sour. You'll already be dead. We'll send him pieces of you. Make him understand that stealing from the Lee family has consequences. The third man, who'd been watching silently, spoke up. Boss said don't damage her yet. Wait for instructions. Scarface stood reluctantly, but not before pressing the knife tip against my throat hard enough to draw blood. Soon, very soon, we'll see how loud Kang's woman screams. They left me there, tied and bleeding and trying very hard not to let the panic win. Had to think. Tae-jin would come for me. I knew that with absolute certainty. But I also knew the Lees were counting on it. This was a trap. They'd taken me to draw him out, make him reckless, vulnerable. I needed to survive long enough for him to find me. And I needed to find a way to warn him what he was walking into. The zip ties were industrial-strength plastic cutting into my wrist. But my hands were small, my bones narrow from years of malnutrition as a kid. Sunmi had taught me this, how to dislocate your thumb to slip restraints. It hurt. God, it hurt. But I forced my thumb joint out of socket with a sickening pop that made bile rise in my throat. The pain was blinding, but my hand was smaller now, narrow enough to slip through. I almost screamed. Bit down on my lip hard enough to draw more blood, forcing myself to stay silent. One hand free. Then the other. I wasn't stupid enough to try running. The warehouse was guarded. I could hear voices outside, multiple men. But I could look for a weapon, a phone, anything useful. The warehouse was mostly empty. Old shipping crates, rusted machinery, evidence of industrial work long abandoned. But in a corner I found a discarded length of pipe. Not much, but better than nothing. And underneath a tarp, miracle of miracles. A cell phone. Old, probably a burner someone had forgotten. But when I pressed the power button, it had battery. 20% no service, but it had battery. I tucked it into my waistband, covered by my shirt. If I could get signal even for a second. Footsteps outside. Multiple sets. The door opening. I dove back to where they'd left me, forced my thumb back into joint with another blinding flash of pain, positioned my hands behind my back like they were still tied. The man who entered wasn't one of the young street soldiers. He was older, 50s maybe, wearing an expensive suit and carrying himself with the authority of someone used to command. Lee Min-jun. The patriarch's son. Tae-jin's father's killer. Miss Brooks. His English was perfect, barely accented. I apologize for the rough treatment. My men can be enthusiastic. I didn't respond. Just stared at him with all the hatred I could summon. He smiled. Silent treatment. I respect that. But we need to have a conversation, you and I. He pulled up a crate, sat down like we were having tea instead of a kidnapping. Do you know who I am? A dead man. His laugh was genuine. Spirit. I like that. Tae-jin chose well. He pulled out a phone, typed something. I'm going to send your boyfriend a message. Let him know we have you. Give him an address where we can make an exchange. He won't come alone. I'm counting on it. Tae-jin is predictable, protective, honorable, desperate to save the people he loves. That desperation makes him sloppy. He showed me the phone screen. A photo of me, bloody and bound. The message beneath it. Trade yourself for the woman. Midnight. Come alone or she dies screaming. He won't trade himself. He will. Because men like Tae-jin, men who've built their empire on loyalty and honor, can't help themselves. They'd rather die than watch someone innocent suffer for their choices. He stood, pocketed the phone. You have 12 hours to live, Miss Brooks. I suggest you use them wisely. Pray perhaps. Make peace with whatever God you believe in. He left, and the weight of what was coming crashed over me. Tae-jin was walking into a trap. And I was the bait. The phone in my waistband felt like a live coal. I waited until the guards outside started their patrol rotation. Sunmi had taught me to track patterns to find the gaps, and pulled it out with shaking hands. Still no service. But there was Wi-Fi. Unprotected Wi-Fi from some business nearby. I opened the browser, typed in an address I'd memorized. Gumwa's emergency contact portal. It was designed for exactly this. Compromised situations where normal communication was impossible. My hands shook as I typed. Lee Warehouse, Docks, District 9. Don't come alone. I love you. Zin. The message went through just as the door opened again. Scarface was back and he wasn't alone. 2 more men carrying what looked like a video camera. Boss wants proof of life. Something to send Kang that'll make him desperate. His smile was cruel. We're going to hurt you now. Not too much. We need you pretty for the exchange. But enough that Kang understands what's waiting if he doesn't cooperate. I didn't fight when they hauled me up, didn't struggle when they positioned me in front of the camera. Fighting would just make them hurt me more. The first punch caught me in the stomach, driving the air from my lungs. The second split my lip. The third. Stop. A new voice. Female, American accented. The boss said light damage only. You're bruising her face. A woman stepped into frame. Mid-30s, blonde, expensive clothes that looked wrong in a warehouse. She studied me with clinical detachment. I'm Dr. Chin. I'm here to make sure they don't accidentally kill you before the exchange. She pulled out a first aid kit. Let me clean that lip. Why are you helping them? I gasped. Money. Simple, honest. The Lee family pays extremely well for medical expertise with no questions asked. She dabbed antiseptic on my split lip with surprisingly gentle hands. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You seem nice. Nice enough to let me go? She laughed without humor. I'm mercenary, not suicidal. The Lees would kill my entire family if I helped you escape. She finished bandaging my lip, stepped back. Survive the next 12 hours. That's the best advice I can give you. They left me alone again and I sagged against the wall, trying to breathe through the pain. Don't come alone, I prayed. Tae-jin, please. Don't come alone. Midnight came with fog rolling off Lake Michigan, turning the warehouse district into something from a noir film. I could hear water lapping against docks, ship horns in the distance, the industrial sounds of a city that never truly slept. They'd moved me to the center of the warehouse, tied to a chair, positioned like an offering. Floodlights surrounded me, turning the space into a stage. Lee Min-jun's men were everywhere. I counted 20, maybe more, all armed, all positioned to create a kill box. This wasn't an exchange. This was an execution. The warehouse doors opened at 12:01. Tae-jin walked in alone. My heart stopped. Oh. No. He was supposed to bring soldiers, back up an army. Not walk into certain death because I was stupid enough to get captured. He wore all black, tactical gear, no suit, no pretense of civility. Even from across the warehouse, I could see the cold fury in his eyes, the barely leashed violence in his posture. I'm here, he said, his voice carrying across the space. Let her go. Lee Min-jun stepped out of the shadows, flanked by guards. Kang Tae-jin. How gracious of you to accept my invitation. This wasn't an invitation. It was a hostage situation. Tae-jin's eyes found mine and something in his expression cracked. He saw the blood, the bruises, the evidence of violence. You hurt her. Light persuasion only. I'm not a monster. Lee smiled. The exchange is simple. You surrender yourself, I release the woman. Then we have a conversation about transferring Gumwa's assets to the Lee family. Peacefully, legally, with no further bloodshed. And if I refuse? Then my men put bullets in your woman's head while you watch. Then we kill you anyway. Then we dismantle Gumwa piece by piece. Lee's voice hardened. You don't have leverage here, Tae-jin. You have a choice. Cooperate and she lives, or fight and watch her die. Tae-jin's hands were empty, no visible weapons. He looked defeated. Broken. Then he smiled. It was a terrible thing, cold and sharp and absolutely without mercy. You made one critical mistake, Tae-jin said softly. What's that? You assumed I came alone. The lights went out. Chaos erupted in darkness. Gunfire, shouting, the screams of men dying. I threw myself sideways, chair and all, hitting the concrete hard but getting out of the direct line of fire. Muzzle flashes strobed through the warehouse like lightning. I saw shapes moving, Gumwa soldiers, dozens of them, pouring through every entrance. Sunmi was there, bandaged but alive, moving through the darkness like a vengeful spirit. And Tae-jin. Tae-jin fought like violence was a language he'd spoken since birth. I watched him drop 3 men in as many seconds, gun in one hand, knife in the other, moving with lethal precision. A Lee soldier got too close and Tae-jin broke his arm with a sickening crack, took his weapon, shot 2 more without breaking stride. He was terrifying. Beautiful. Absolutely unstoppable. Lee Min-jun was shouting orders, trying to rally his men, but Gumhwa had numbers and surprise and fury on their side. The warehouse had become an abattoir. Someone cut my restraints. Sunmi, her face grim but satisfied. Can you walk? Yes. Then run. Get to the east exit. Tae-jin's orders. I'm not leaving him. He's fine. You're the target. Move. She physically pushed me toward the exit and I ran. Through smoke and gunfire and bodies, praying with every step that Tae-jin would survive what he'd started. I burst out into cold November air, gasping, and found Han waiting with an SUV. Get in. I dove into the back seat just as an explosion rocked the warehouse. Not the whole building but enough to shake the ground and send flames shooting through broken windows. What was that? Insurance, Han said grimly. Tae-jin rigged the warehouse. Anyone left inside when it blows. A second explosion larger than the first. The warehouse's roof collapsed in a shower of sparks and burning debris. No. I grabbed for the door handle but Han was faster, hitting the child locks. He's not in there. Look. Emerging from the smoke and fire like something from mythology came Tae-jin, carrying an unconscious Lee Min-jun over his shoulder. Sunmi flanked him along with a dozen Gumhwa soldiers. Bloody, burnt but alive. Alive. The SUV door opened and Tae-jin threw Lee Min-jun into the back like luggage, then climbed in beside me. His hands found my face, turning me toward the interior light, cataloging every injury with eyes that had gone molten with rage. Who did this to you? Tae-jin, I'm fine. Who did this? Scarface. The one with tattoos. He's dead. I slit his throat personally. His thumbs traced my bruised cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I should have killed him slower. You came for me. Of course I came for you. He pulled me against his chest and I felt him shaking. Did you think I'd let them keep you? That I'd let them hurt you without consequence? His arms tightened. You're mine, Imani. Mine to protect. Mine to keep safe. And anyone who touches what's mine burns. In the front seat, Lee Min-jun groaned, coming around. Tae-jin's expression went arctic. Drive us to the secondary compound. The one with the interrogation facilities. His eyes never left the Lee patriarch's son. We're going to have a very long conversation about the price of kidnapping my woman. The secondary compound was in the industrial outskirts. A nondescript building that looked like a warehouse from outside but housed Gumhwa's less savory operations within. Tae-jin had Sunmi take me to a private room upstairs while he dealt with Lee Min-jun in the basement. I should have stayed away. Should have let him handle the violence without witness. But after 20 minutes of pacing I couldn't stand it anymore. Sunmi tried to stop me. Sejangnam doesn't want you to see this. I need to see it. I need to understand the cost of what I chose. She studied me for a long moment then nodded. Your choice. But you can't unsee what's down there. The basement was exactly what I'd feared. Concrete floor with drains, soundproofed walls, the infrastructure of interrogation. Lee Min-jun was zip-tied to a metal chair, blood dripping from his nose, one eye already swelling shut. Tae-jin stood in front of him, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, knuckles bloody. When I entered he turned and the look on his face was pure fury. You shouldn't be here. I need to be here. I moved to stand beside him. He took me. Hurt me. I deserved to face him. Something in Tae-jin's expression softened fractionally. He nodded, turned back to Lee. Your men are dead. All 23 of them. The warehouse is ash. And the weapons shipment you had stored there, the one you were planning to use against my territory, is melted slag. Tae-jin's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. You've lost everything. Lee spat blood. My father will. Your father will what? Start a war he can't win. Tae-jin crouched down, eye level with his prisoner. I've already sent him a message. Photos of the warehouse. Photos of his dead soldiers. And a very simple proposition. End this vendetta, or I'll end the Lee family line permanently. You don't have the stomach for it. Your father was weak and you're weaker. The slap came so fast I barely saw it, Tae-jin's hand connecting with Lee's face with enough force to snap his head sideways. My father was weak because he showed mercy to the Lee family after you killed him. He could have burned your father's empire to the ground, but he believed in the old codes. In honor among families. Tae-jin's voice dropped to something soft and terrible. I have no such belief. You took the woman I love. You hurt her. You threatened her life. There is no code, no honor, no restraint that will save you from what that earns. He stood, pulled a knife from his belt. The blade gleamed under fluorescent lights. You have one chance. Tell me everyone who was involved in the kidnapping. Names, locations, bank accounts. Give me everything and I'll make your death quick. And if I don't? Tae-jin's smile was a blade. Then I'll take my time. Days, maybe weeks. You'll beg me for death long before I grant it. Lee looked at me, then really looked, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. She's made you weak. The great Kang Tae-jin, brought to his knees by a black church girl who thinks she understands our world. I stepped forward before Tae-jin could react. I understand enough. I understand that you're a coward who kidnaps women instead of facing your enemies directly. I understand that you're already dead, you just don't know it yet. I leaned in close, meeting his gaze without flinching. And I understand that Tae-jin is giving you a choice you don't deserve. If it were up to me, I'd let him take his time. Shock flickered across Lee's face. Then fear. She means it, Tae-jin said softly. I've tried to shelter her from this side of our world. But you forced her to see it. Forced her to understand what it takes to survive in our business. He pressed the knife against Lee's throat. So I'll ask one more time. Names. Locations. Everything. We broke. It took another 10 minutes, but he broke. Names spilled out. Conspirators within the Lee family, dirty cops on their payroll, the politician who'd been feeding them information about Gumwa's legitimate operations. Everything. Tae-jin recorded it all on his phone, then nodded to Sunmi. Send this to Elder Lee. Let him know what his son has done. Let him know the price for continuing this war. He straightened, looked down at Lee Min-jun with cold finality. I said I'd make it quick. The knife moved. Once. Cling. The kind of efficiency that came from practice. Lee Min-jun slumped in the chair, blood pooling on concrete. Dead within seconds. I should have felt horror. Should have been sick. But all I felt was cold satisfaction that the man who'd hurt me, who'd terrorized me, who'd almost killed Tae-jin was gone. Tae-jin turned to me, searching my face for disgust, for fear, for rejection. Imani. I kissed him. Hard and desperate, my hands fisting in his bloody shirt, pulling him closer despite the violence, despite the corpse behind us, despite everything. When we broke apart, his eyes were wide with shock. You're not afraid of me? I'm afraid of losing you. There's a difference. I pressed my palm against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. You killed for me. Protected me. Burned your enemies for daring to touch me. How could I be afraid of that? Because it makes me a monster. It makes you mine. I held his gaze. Mama always said we're defined by how we love, not how we fight. You fight like hell. But you love like salvation. And my voice caught. I love you, Tae-jin. Monster and man and everything in between. The confession hung between us, weighted with everything we'd survived, everything we'd become. I love you, he breathed. God help me, I love you more than I love this empire, more than I love my own life. You're the first person I've ever loved more than duty. He kissed me again, soft and reverent, a stark contrast to the violence still drying on his hands. We need to leave, Sunmi said from the doorway, her voice carefully neutral. The cleanup crew is arriving and Elder Lee will want to negotiate. Tae-jin pulled back reluctantly. Can you walk? I can run if I have to. His smile was fierce and proud. That's my woman. The war with the Lee family ended 3 days later. Not with more bloodshed but with negotiation. Elder Lee, faced with evidence of his son's corruption and the deaths of 23 soldiers, sued for peace. The terms were brutal but fair. The Lees would withdraw from all territories that bordered Gumwa's operations. They'd pay reparations for the kidnapping. And they'd publicly acknowledge Tae-jin's authority over Chicago's Korean underworld. In exchange, Tae-jin wouldn't execute the rest of the conspirators Lee Min-jun had named. Mercy, not weakness. A calculated show of strength that said he could destroy his enemies but chose control instead. I sat beside him during the negotiations, dressed in a black suit, my bruises hidden under professional makeup. The Lee delegation stared at me, the black woman who'd survived their kidnapping and emerged as Kang Tae-jin's public partner. I met their gazes without flinching. Elder Lee spoke directly to me in Korean. You are not what I expected. Neither is he. I gestured to Tae-jin. But we're what you're getting. Partner to partner, counselor to counselor. This is the new Gumwa. Adjust accordingly. Something shifted in the old man's expression. Not warmth but respect. Your Korean is excellent. My mother was a good teacher. She raised a strong daughter. She raised a daughter who knows her worth. And who doesn't accept disrespect from anyone, regardless of their power. I let that sink in. The woman who helped plan my kidnapping, your daughter-in-law. What happens to her? Elder Lee's jaw tightened. That is family business. It became my business when she put a price on my head. I leaned forward. I want her out of Chicago. Permanently. Send her back to Seoul, marry her off to someone in the countryside, I don't care. But if I ever see her again, the truce ends. Tae-jin's hand found mine under the table, squeezed in solidarity. Elder Lee was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Agreed. She leaves within the week. The negotiations concluded with a formal dinner, traditional Korean food served with ceremony. Tae-jin and I sat at the head of the table, presenting a united front. When he poured me tea, he used both hands, the gesture of deep respect. When I accepted it, I did the same. The message was clear. We were partners. Equals. And the old ways that dismissed women, that dismissed outsiders, would not hold in the new Gumwa. 3 months later. Mama's church had a new roof and fresh paint, funded by an anonymous donor, that absolutely wasn't Gumwa money laundered through a legitimate charity. She was back in the pulpit, stronger than ever, preaching about redemption and second chances. I'd moved into the compound permanently. My suite expanded to include an office where I managed Gumwa's increasingly legitimate business operations. Tae-jin was serious about transitioning the empire. The violence would never fully disappear, but we were building something better underneath. Sunmi had been promoted to head of security. She'd also started teaching self-defense classes at Mama's church, a community outreach program that helped immigrant women learn to protect themselves. The irony of a gangster's enforcer teaching church ladies how to fight wasn't lost on anyone. I was working on contract negotiations with a shipping company when Tae-jin appeared in my office doorway. Busy? He asked. Always. What do you need? Instead of answering, he crossed the room, knelt beside my chair and pulled out a small box. My heart stopped. Imani Brooks. His voice was rough with emotion. You saved my life before you even knew me. You faced down kidnappers and killers. You learned my world and then changed it, made it better, made me better. He opened the box, revealing a ring, a simple platinum band set with a black pearl. I want to spend the rest of my life keeping you safe and letting you make me human. Will you marry me? I should have thought about the implications. About becoming the wife of Chicago's most dangerous man. About the target it would paint on my back. But all I thought about was the way he looked at me. Like I was precious. Like I was worth burning the world for. Like I was his salvation and he was mine. Yes. He slid the ring on my finger, then pulled me into a kiss that tasted like promises and future and the beginning of something neither of us could have imagined that night in the Millennium Tower. When we broke apart, I pressed my forehead against his. Mama's going to want to do the ceremony at her church. I'll convert to Christianity if that's what it takes. I laughed. You don't have to convert. But you do have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me we keep building this. Not just the empire but the better version. The one that protects people instead of preying on them. The one that your mother would be proud of. His eyes shone with unshed tears. I promise. We'll build it together. Partners. Partners. Always. The wedding was 6 months later. A fusion of Korean and Southern traditions that brought together Gumwa executives and South Side church ladies in the most unlikely celebration Chicago had ever seen. Mama officiated, her voice strong and certain as she blessed our union in English and Korean. Elder Hwang attended with his wife, bringing a traditional hanbok as a wedding gift. Sunmi was my maid of honor, looking distinctly uncomfortable in a dress but fiercely proud. Tae-jin wore a traditional Korean wedding costume, and I wore my grandmother's wedding dress. Simple white silk with lace sleeves, a reminder of where I'd come from and how far I'd traveled. When we exchanged vows, I said mine in Korean. He said his in English. A perfect blending of worlds that had seemed impossible when I was just a cleaner leaving a post-it note for a stranger. At the reception, Tae-jin pulled me onto the dance floor. Did I mention you're beautiful? Only 3 times today. Then I'm behind schedule. He spun me and I laughed. I love you, Imani Kang. The name still felt strange. Imani Kang. The pastor's daughter who became a crime lord's wife. The cleaner who became a queen. I love you too. Monster and all. He smiled against my hair. For you, I'll try to be less monstrous. Don't try too hard. I like you dangerous. Good. Because Chicago isn't getting any safer. Then we protect each other. Partners. Always. We danced until the stars came out, surrounded by family, chosen and blood, legitimate and criminal, Korean and American. All united in the improbable empire we'd built on honor and violence and love. And when Tae-jin carried me over the threshold of our room that night, I knew I'd made the right choice. The brave choice. The choice to leave a note for a stranger and trust that truth was worth the risk of everything. Because some truths were worth burning for. Some loves were worth fighting for. And some cleaners were always meant to be queens. The penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan had been transformed. Not with the sterile minimalism Tae-jin usually preferred, but with touches of warmth, candles everywhere, rose petals scattered across black silk sheets, the scent of jasmine and cedar mixing in the air. He set me down gently, his hands lingering on my waist. We were finally alone. No guards outside the door, no executives waiting with urgent business, no enemies plotting our destruction. Just us. Nervous? He asked softly, his fingers finding the buttons at the back of my dress. Should I be? We've done this before. This is different. He pressed a kiss to my bare shoulder as the dress loosened. Before you were mine in private. Now you're mine in front of God and our families and everyone who matters. It feels. He paused, searching for words. Sacred. The dress pooled at my feet and I turned to face him, wearing only the delicate lingerie Sunmi had insisted I buy. His breath caught. Sacred, I agreed, reaching for his tie. Like a vow made permanent. I undressed him slowly, reverently, revealing the body I'd come to know so well. The scars that mapped his violent life, the strength that had protected me, the vulnerability he showed only to me. When we finally came together, it was different than before. Slower. Deeper. Each touch a promise, each kiss a covenant. He moved inside me like he was trying to memorize every sensation, every sound I made, every place our bodies connected. I love you, he breathed against my neck. My wife. My partner. My salvation. I love you, I gasped, nails digging into his shoulders. My husband. My equal. My home. We made love until the candles burned low and the moon set over the lake, mapping each other with hands and mouths and whispered promises about the future we'd build together. Afterward, we lay tangled in silk sheets, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. Tell me something, I said quietly. Something you've never told anyone. He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I tried to leave once. After my mother died. I was 21, had just finished college. I thought, maybe I could be something else. Someone else. Not Kang Tae-jin, heir to a criminal empire, but just Tae-jin. Maybe a teacher. Or an artist. I propped myself up on one elbow, looking down at him. What stopped you? My father died 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave for Seoul. Assassinated outside his favorite restaurant, 6 bullets, died before the ambulance arrived. His jaw tightened. The empire would have collapsed without leadership. Hundreds of people who depended on us, soldiers, their families, the legitimate employees, all would have suffered. So I stayed. Became what I was always meant to be. Do you regret it? I used to. Every day for the first year. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing. But then I met you. And you showed me that I could be both. The leader the empire needs and the man who wants to paint watercolors and read poetry. You didn't ask me to choose between them. You just loved both versions. Tears pricked my eyes. That's because both versions are you. The violence and the art. The empire and the honor. You're not one or the other, you're everything. He pulled me down for a kiss that tasted like promise and forever. What about you? He asked when we broke apart. Tell me something I don't know. I thought about it. The night I left you that note, I went home and packed a bag. Put in my passport, my mother's jewelry, $500 cash. I was ready to run if you'd reacted badly. If you'd sent people to kill me instead of protect me. Where would you have gone? Canada maybe. Or Mexico. Somewhere I could disappear. I smiled ruefully. I had it all planned out. New name, new life, new everything. But you didn't run. No. Because you called me to your penthouse and offered me a choice instead of a threat. Because you paid for Mama's surgery without asking for anything in return. Because, I paused finding the words. Because you saw me. Really saw me. Not just the cleaner, not just the translator, but me. And once someone sees you like that, running feels like losing a piece of yourself. His arms tightened around me. I saw you because you were impossible to ignore. A woman brave enough to save a stranger's life, smart enough to navigate my world, strong enough to survive a kidnapping and come out fiercer than before. He kissed my forehead. You were always going to be a queen, Imani. I just gave you an empire worthy of your strength. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two broken people who'd found wholeness in the most unlikely place. 3 weeks into our marriage, the test came. Not from the Lee family. They'd honored the truce with the wariness of defeated enemies watching for opportunities. Not from rival organizations. Tae-jin's reputation had been cemented by how brutally he'd handled my kidnapping. The challenge came from within. Choi Min-suk, the Captain Tae-jin had choked during that meeting months ago, called for a vote of no confidence. He stood before the assembled Gumhwa executives in the compound's main hall and made his case in formal Korean. Sejangnam has become distracted by his marriage to an outsider. A woman with no understanding of our traditions, no blood connection to our families, no experience in our business. His eyes flicked to me sitting at Tae-jin's right hand. She's made him soft. He prioritizes legitimacy over profit, turns away lucrative deals because they conflict with her moral code. Murmurs rippled through the room. Some executives nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. Tae-jin remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable. But I felt the tension in his body, coiled like a spring. 3 months ago, we could have taken over the Chinatown gambling operations, Choi continued. 15 million annually. Sejangnam refused because his wife objected to the human trafficking component. 6 weeks ago we had an opportunity to expand our protection services. 10 million. Again refused because she convinced him it was dishonorable. He turned to address the full assembly. I propose we return to the old ways. The ways Kang Tae-jin built this empire on. Strength, not sentiment. Profit over principles. And leadership that isn't compromised by a woman who doesn't belong in our world. The silence that followed was deafening. I started to stand, to defend myself, to argue, but Tae-jin's hand on my wrist stopped me. He stood instead, moving with the controlled grace of a predator. You're right, Choi-sai, he said softly. My wife has changed me. Choi's smile was triumphant. Then you admit. I admit that before Imani I was becoming my father. Brutal, isolated, governing through fear instead of respect. I was building an empire that would die with me because no one would mourn its passing. Tae-jin circled the table slowly. My wife showed me a different path. Strength with honor. Profit and principles. Power that doesn't require cruelty to maintain itself. He stopped in front of Choi. The Chinatown deal you mentioned? I turned it down because the human trafficking aspect would have brought federal attention we couldn't afford. Within 6 months, everyone involved in that operation was arrested. We would have lost 15 million and faced RICO charges. Tae-jin pulled out his phone, displayed something on the large screen behind him. Financial projections, profit margins, growth charts. Since my marriage 3 months ago, Gumhwa's legitimate revenue has increased 43%. Our legal exposure has decreased by half. We've established partnerships with 3 major Korean business families who previously refused to work with us because of our violent reputation. He looked around the room. My wife didn't make me weak. She made me strategic. He turned back to Choi. But you're not really concerned about profits, are you? You're concerned about power. About influence. About the fact that I listened to her counsel before yours. She's not even Korean. She speaks 4 languages including Korean. She has a degree in international relations. She negotiated the Huang partnership that netted us 30 million in shipping contracts. Tae-jin's voice dropped to something dangerous. And she's my wife. Which means disrespecting her is disrespecting me. The temperature in the room plummeted. I'm calling your vote of no confidence, Tae-jin continued. Right now. Everyone in this room decides. Do you want the old Gumhwa built on violence and fear and short-term profits? Or do you want the new Gumhwa built on strategy and honor and sustainable power? He gestured to me. But understand this. The vote isn't between me and Choi. It's between me and Imani as partners or Choi alone. Because if I go, she goes. And if she goes, I burn this empire to the ground before I let any of you have it. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Elder Huang stood first. I vote for the new Gumhwa. Kang Tae-jin and his wife have my family's full support. One by one the executives stood. Some quickly, some reluctantly, but they stood. 37 executives. 36 votes for Tae-jin and me. Only Choi remained seated. You've made your choice, Tae-jin said quietly. Now I'll make mine. You have 24 hours to liquidate your interests in Gumhwa and leave Chicago. If you're still here after that, I'll treat you as an enemy. And you know how I treat my enemies. Choi's face went white. He'd expected debate, maybe a fight. Not exile. But he nodded, stood, and left without another word. When the room finally cleared, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. You would really burn it all down? I asked. If they'd voted against us? Tae-jin pulled me into his arms. In a heartbeat. This empire only matters because you're in it. Without you, it's just buildings and money and violence. With you, it's something worth protecting. I kissed him, fierce and grateful and still slightly terrified by the depth of his devotion. Partners, I whispered against his mouth. Always. 2 years later. I stood in the Millennium Tower 32nd floor, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The office had been completely renovated, no longer just Tae-jin's headquarters but ours. My desk sat beside his, equal in size and placement. The walls held both our degrees, our achievements, the tangible proof of the empire we'd built together. Gumhwa was 70% legitimate now. We still had the shadow operations. You couldn't completely escape the violence that had built the empire. But they were smaller, more controlled, less cruel. The protection rackets had been restructured as legitimate security services. The gambling operations were being slowly phased into legal gaming lounges. Even the loan business had been transformed into a community credit union that actually helped immigrant families instead of preying on them. We'd made enemies in the transition. Old-school families who thought we'd gone soft. Young wolves who saw opportunity in our reforms. But we'd also made allies, legitimate businesspeople who respected our evolution, Korean government officials who appreciated our community investment, even some FBI agents who preferred working with honorable criminals over the chaotic violence of younger gangs. My phone rang. Mama's number. Baby girl, you still coming to church on Sunday? I've got a family that needs translation help, newly arrived from Busan. Of course, Mama. I'll bring Sunmi, she's been wanting to meet the new Korean families in the community. That woman still terrifying? Absolutely. But she also taught 6 women how to disarm an attacker last week, so I'd say she's using her powers for good. Mama laughed. Your life is very strange, Imani. But it's mine. And I wouldn't change it. After we hung up, I walked to Tae-jin's desk. He was reviewing contracts, reading glasses perched on his nose, a detail that made him look scholarly instead of dangerous. Mama wants us at church Sunday. What time? Service starts at 11. But she wants us there early to meet a new family. He made a note in his calendar. Done. Anything else? I pulled a small envelope from my pocket, set it on his desk. He looked up, curious, then opened it. The ultrasound image inside made him freeze. Is this 8 weeks? I found out this morning. My voice shook slightly. I know we talked about waiting, about making sure the empire was stable first, but... He was around the desk and pulling me into his arms before I could finish. But life doesn't wait for perfect timing. Are you happy? Because I'm terrified and thrilled and... I'm everything. He pressed his forehead against mine and I saw tears in his eyes. Terrified that I'll mess this up. Thrilled that we get to build this together. Grateful that you're giving me a family I thought I'd never have. We're giving each other a family, I corrected. Partners, remember? Tae-jin remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable. But I felt the tension in his body, coiled like a spring. 3 months ago, we could have taken over the Chinatown gambling operations, Choi continued. 15 million annually. Sejangnam refused because his wife objected to the human trafficking component. 6 weeks ago we had an opportunity to expand our protection services. 10 million. Again refused because she convinced him it was dishonorable. He turned to address the full assembly. I propose we return to the old ways. The ways Kang Tae-jin built this empire on. Strength, not sentiment. Profit over principles. And leadership that isn't compromised by a woman who doesn't belong in our world. The silence that followed was deafening. I started to stand, to defend myself, to argue, but Tae-jin's hand on my wrist stopped me. He stood instead, moving with the controlled grace of a predator. You're right, Choi-sai, he said softly. My wife has changed me. Choi's smile was triumphant. Then you admit. I admit that before Imani I was becoming my father. Brutal, isolated, governing through fear instead of respect. I was building an empire that would die with me because no one would mourn its passing. Tae-jin circled the table slowly. My wife showed me a different path. Strength with honor. Profit and principles. Power that doesn't require cruelty to maintain itself. He stopped in front of Choi. The Chinatown deal you mentioned? I turned it down because the human trafficking aspect would have brought federal attention we couldn't afford. Within 6 months, everyone involved in that operation was arrested. We would have lost 15 million and faced RICO charges. Tae-jin pulled out his phone, displayed something on the large screen behind him. Financial projections, profit margins, growth charts. Since my marriage 3 months ago, Gumwa's legitimate revenue has increased 43%. Our legal exposure has decreased by half. We've established partnerships with 3 major Korean business families who previously refused to work with us because of our violent reputation. He looked around the room. My wife didn't make me weak. She made me strategic. He turned back to Choi. But you're not really concerned about profits, are you? You're concerned about power. About influence. About the fact that I listened to her counsel before yours. She's not even Korean. She speaks 4 languages, including Korean. She has a degree in international relations. She negotiated the Huang partnership that netted us 30 million in shipping contracts. Tae-jin's voice dropped to something dangerous. And she's my wife. Which means disrespecting her is disrespecting me. The temperature in the room plummeted. I'm calling your vote of no confidence, Tae-jin continued. Right now. Everyone in this room decides. Do you want the old Gumwa built on violence and fear and short-term profits? Or do you want the new Gumwa built on strategy and honor and sustainable power? He gestured to me. But understand this. The vote isn't between me and Choi. It's between me and Imani as partners or Choi alone. Because if I go, she goes. And if she goes, I burn this empire to the ground before I let any of you have it. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Elder Huang stood first. I vote for the new Gumwa. Kang Tae-jin and his wife have my family's full support. One by one the executives stood. Some quickly, some reluctantly, but they stood. 37 executives. 36 votes for Tae-jin and me. Only Choi remained seated. You've made your choice, Tae-jin said quietly. Now I'll make mine. You have 24 hours to liquidate your interests in Gumwa and leave Chicago. If you're still here after that, I'll treat you as an enemy. And you know how I treat my enemies. Choi's face went white. He'd expected debate, maybe a fight. Not exile. But he nodded, stood, and left without another word. When the room finally cleared, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. You would really burn it all down? I asked. If they'd voted against us? Tae-jin pulled me into his arms. In a heartbeat. This empire only matters because you're in it. Without you it's just buildings and money and violence. With you it's something worth protecting. I kissed him, fierce and grateful and still slightly terrified by the depth of his devotion. Partners, I whispered against his mouth. Always. 2 years later. I stood in the Millennium Tower 32nd floor, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The office had been completely renovated, No longer just Tae-jin's headquarters but ours. My desk sat beside his, equal in size and placement. The walls held both our degrees, our achievements, the tangible proof of the empire we'd built together. Gumwa was 70% legitimate now. We still had the shadow operations. You couldn't completely escape the violence that had built the empire. But they were smaller, more controlled, less cruel. The protection rackets had been restructured as legitimate security services. The gambling operations were being slowly phased into legal gaming lounges. Even the loan business had been transformed into a community credit union that actually helped immigrant families instead of preying on them. We'd made enemies in the transition. Old-school families who thought we'd gone soft. Young wolves who saw opportunity in our reforms. But we'd also made allies, legitimate businesspeople who respected our evolution, Korean government officials who appreciated our community investment, even some FBI agents who preferred working with honorable criminals over the chaotic violence of younger gangs. My phone rang. Mama's number. Baby girl, you still coming to church on Sunday? I've got a family that needs translation help, newly arrived from Busan. Of course, Mama. I'll bring Sunmi, she's been wanting to meet the new Korean families in the community. That woman still terrifying? Absolutely. But she also taught 6 women how to disarm an attacker last week, so I'd say she's using her powers for good. Mama laughed. Your life is very strange, Yumani. But it's mine. And I wouldn't change it. After we hung up, I walked to Tae-jin's desk. He was reviewing contracts, reading glasses perched on his nose, a detail that made him look scholarly instead of dangerous. Mama wants us at church Sunday. What time? Service starts at 11. But she wants us there early to meet a new family. He made a note in his calendar. Done. Anything else? I pulled a small envelope from my pocket, set it on his desk. He looked up, curious, then opened it. The ultrasound image inside made him freeze. Is this 8 weeks? I found out this morning. My voice shook slightly. I know we talked about waiting, about making sure the empire was stable first, but... He was around the desk and pulling me into his arms before I could finish. But life doesn't wait for perfect timing. Are you happy? Because I'm terrified and thrilled and... I'm everything. He pressed his forehead against mine and I saw tears in his eyes. Terrified that I'll mess this up. Thrilled that we get to build this together. Grateful that you're giving me a family I thought I'd never have. We're giving each other a family, I corrected. Partners, remember?